everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. In this video, we're going to be talking about a video that was shared to me by Rachel Zumaya, which was amazing. It all has to do with the Jews returning to Israel, and even though it's been going on for a while now, right, since the 1940s, it's still happening, and there's still developments. And so anyway, I'm going to talk about the video a little bit, and then we're going to talk about something that I realized while watching this video, the importance of language, and specifically English, Russian, when it comes to the second coming and how everything's going to be coordinated between the two world capitals, which is going to be the New Jerusalem here on the American continent, and then Old Jerusalem in Israel, right? Because I realized that language is probably going to become pretty important. And there's a lot of things to think about and observe, and I'm going to share everything that I found with you. But first, I want to highlight somebody that sent in some mission photos. I've been doing this. If you would like to send in your mission photos, please do so. I love seeing you rather than just a faceless audience. I like seeing who's watching me. And this actually goes perfect with what we're going to talk about today, because we're going to be talking about the Germanic languages, specifically English, German, and some others. And okay, so now I am not making fun. I am not making fun. This is probably one of my favorite collection of photos that have been sent in. This is from Sherry Henson, and it was her mission to Germany. And I must say, these are the most Germany in the 80s photos I have ever seen. 99 red balloons go by. Dun, 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 dun. That's like the first thing that came to mind. It's awesome. I am celebrating you, Sherry. I'm not laughing at you. I'm celebrating these pictures. So she says, "Hello, I thought I would send in another missionary photo set. I'm on the right in every photo with my companion. I served in the Germany Frankfurt mission from 87 to 88. I was lucky enough to be there just as the temple was completed and having its open house. I was able to tour people through a few weeks and attended the dedication. It was amazing, as I'm sure you heard stories." Uh, no, I have not. I've not heard stories. I might have to look that up. Um, I heard as we were inside that the clouds broke just a few moments as the dedicatory prayer was said. Wow. I saw miracle after miracle there as I served in a country that was hard to get people to listen to you. And just as a side note, I experienced the same thing in Spain. We didn't have much success among European Spaniards. It happened, but it was more common to baptize immigrants that were there from Africa, Eastern Europe, and a lot from Central and South America. But anyway, back to her email. It was worth all the, quote, no thank yous to get the few yeses. Yep. Many experiences there prepared me for these last days we are now experiencing. I'm loving your channel. I feel like we have a group of friends who gather together for gospel discussions. I'm sure I speak for the whole group when I say I appreciate all your hard work and in-depth study and inspiration greatly. God bless for all you do. Great things await. Best, Sherry Hansen from San Jose, California. Thank you so much, Sherry. I love seeing these pictures, and thank you for serving your mission, and I'm sure that you're receiving all the blessings that come with that. Okay, so now back to Rachel's email. She says, I watched this today and found it interesting that this guy called it the quote-unquote restoration of Israel. Now, I watched this video. You guys, you should watch this, please. I'm going to leave the link in the description below. This will help this whole story come more to life if you watch this. This is a very good video. He talks about coming to Israel and how he felt basically inspired to go to Israel, and how there's a lot of movement right now, a lot of people gathering in Israel and how he feels like he's fulfilling prophecy. And, we've talked about this a lot on the channel, how I have personally seen many of you, as a matter of fact, but also in my personal life, people coming to the Midwest, specifically from the Western states. I'm sure that they're coming from other places too, but there, I have no shortage of anecdotes of people coming from the Western states to Missouri, to Kansas, to the Midwest, Iowa, Arkansas. So I think that something very similar is happening with us. We're not all intended to go to the Midwest, right? You're called to gather wherever you live, but I think that the Lord is moving people um, inward. I think that it's not like going to be like a mass call out in general conference, hey, it's time for you to go to Missouri. I just think that for those who it's right for them in their lives, they're being led to this area, to the Midwest, and I think it has to do with the second coming. So I think there's a parallel. I think there's a parallel going on between the gathering to Israel and the gathering to the Missouri area. I really do. If you've been watching my channel for any amount of time, there's just been example after example, including the people that I've been interviewing on the channel. So it's interesting. It's very interesting. Okay. So continuing on, she says, perhaps the restoration. Oh, by the way, so yeah, in this video, it's three Jewish men, and they're just talking about what's going on, specifically the one man's experience. But they used restoration, the word restoration, a couple times. But not only that, but I noticed that they also used the phrase "hope of Israel," and I did a video about that recently. As the phrase was used by President Nelson and where it came from. You can find that exact phrase in the book Mormon Doctrine. So I read from that. So you're not going to be disappointed if you watch this video, I promise you. Okay, so she continues. Perhaps the restoration of the 10 tribes is those who are Jews by birth now being led back to the land of Israel, whereas the gathering of exiled Israel is what the church is in charge of. Perhaps Joseph Smith is leading that from the other side. Once again, all assumptions, but it is cool to know what they are feeling and how God is leading them. Yes, it's amazing to see and witness. Okay, so here's the video. It's called "He Heard the Shofar," and if you don't know what a shofar is, that's the ram's horn that they blow. He heard the shofar at the Temple Mount, and then this happened. So I subscribe to this channel because this is called the Israel Guys. There's good stuff. There's good stuff in this video, and I'm sure that they have a lot of other good good content. So as I was watching this, I mean, I'm sure you already know just from life experience, there are many Jews and many Israeli Jews that speak English, right? Because he's talking about how Jerusalem is literally not just people moving there, but it is literally being built again, businesses, buildings, residential buildings, so on and so forth. And it's a real tangible reality. And the fact of the matter is that the time is going to come where we have the second coming, and that there's going to have to be some kind of coordination between the two world capitals, right? And one thing that facilitates coordination is language. Now, the interesting thing is that after the flood, right? We all know the story. After Noah's flood, there was Babel in the Tower of Babel. That was like the early version of Babylon. It's different from like the later Empire of Babylon, but it's like the same location and basically the ancestors. And they had one language. They had one language, but there was a lot of pride, and they wanted to basically build an empire, make a name for themselves, reach heaven without the help of God. There was just a lot of pride. And so God, he did something with the languages to where there was no longer just one language. And presumably up until that point, they were speaking the pure Adamic language, most likely. I don't know for sure. Well, now it's interesting because it's almost like things are kind of going in reverse. Now it's starting to become almost like one language again with so many people speaking English. And there may not be an exact connection, but at least in with this, I think with us here in America that are going to be at this world capital, and with Israel, so many that speak English there, maybe the language is kind of coming back together. And I don't know if like the pure Adamic language is going to come back. I don't know how things are going to go during the millennium, but I would assume that things would start to like reverse themselves. Just like the Earth is going to go back to its paradisiacal state, maybe language will be supposedly quote unquote healed, um, and brought back together so we all understand each other. But we're using language appropriately and not for prideful reasons or to make a name for ourselves. You know what I mean? I don't know what's going to happen, but so I was just kind of thinking along those lines, and I wanted to like get the actual facts. And so here, this is a website or a company called CCJK, Enable Global Business, and excuse me, they talk about Israel and the languages that are spoken there. So let's start with this. Um, okay, I do not want that right there. Oh, that's lovely. Okay, I guess I can't zoom in without that thing getting in the way. It says many ethnic groups are living in Israel. Israel is located in the Middle East. Now, of course, why are there so many ethnic groups there? With it among Jews themselves, I'm just talking about Jews. Obviously, it's because of the diaspora. Um, after the Roman Empire destroyed Jerusalem, the temple, from that time all the way until now, Jews have been scattered throughout the whole world, primarily Eastern Europe, and then you have the Sephardic Jews in Spain, but other places too. Okay, so um, it is a small size area with a population of about 8.9 million people. Many people from different cultures immigrated to Israel, and the interaction of different ethnicities resulted in the emergence of different languages. As per the Israel Central Bureau of Statistics, 49% of the population speaks Hebrew, 15% Russian, 18% Arabic, 20% French, 2% English, and 1.6% Spanish. The other languages that are spoken in Israel are 10%. At present, English language is taught in schools so that Israelis can communicate with the global world easily. Okay, so English is being taught, it's required in schools, and you have to wonder if maybe the Lord has had a hand in that because it's in preparation for the millennium, right? The millennium and relations between the two capitals and the entire world. Okay, so here's another website, Alpha Omega Translations, celebrating 20 years. The four most important languages of Israel. Okay, this one I will zoom in. English. So first we have Hebrew, and then Arabic, and then third English. Thanks to British colonization, English used to be one of the official languages that would become the independent state of Israel, but this changed after 1948. Now English has no real official status, but it is the most common language in the arena of foreign exchange and relations with other countries. Most Israelis can speak it fairly well. So I wish there was like a percentage for that, but most Israelis can speak it fairly well, as it is a required second language for students in both Hebrew and Arabic schools. Israelis who travel tend to have very high levels of English, which makes it easier for them to get around. I do not think that is by mistake at all. I don't think that British colonization was by mistake. I know that it's always demonized in movies, in history books, and so forth. And I'm not saying that there wasn't bad that happened. There were bad things that happened, and I remember Gordon B. Hinckley talking about that because he served his mission to uh, the United Kingdom, and he talked about there was a lot of good, but there was also bad that came out of that. But I think one of the good things was the spread of English, uh, because it's a unifying agent, right? Let's look at the world map. Okay, United Kingdom. So, we know that it's the official language here in the UK. It's also, I think, probably the primary language of Ireland, although I think they're trying to revive the native language. We got Canada, the United States. There are many Caribbean countries where English is the official language. Several countries in Africa, notably the country of South Africa. You also have Nigeria, Ghana. Um, okay, India. That's like a big one because they have a population of more than 1 billion people, and they speak English because of the United Kingdom and colonization. You have New Zealand, Australia, and then those are just places where it's natively spoken. And then when it comes to business and foreign relations, yeah, English is it's necessary in most cases, or in a lot of cases. It's the official language of aviation, right? It doesn't matter where you are in the world. If you want to become a pilot, an air traffic controller, English is the language of aviation. So I've said before that even though, again, colonization, whether it be the United Kingdom, whether it was Spain and Portugal colonizing the Americas, yes, bad things happen, but also good things happen. They not only did they spread their language, but they also spread the gospel. And even though it wasn't the fullness of the gospel, at least it prepped the Americas to be familiar with Christ and more easily accept the missionaries when they went there, because they already understood who Christ was, rather than believing in pagan gods and uh, being into idolatry and stuff like that. So good and bad, bad and good. Okay, and let's focus on the good. So English, very important, and most notably the fact that Israel, a very important country, a very important people, a covenant people that God still remembers. It's fascinating. It's fascinating that English is widely spoken there. Okay, so let's see. Now, another interesting thing here as we continue with this article, number 4 is Russian. Russian. It says this might be a surprising language to find on this particular list, but the truth is that Russian is the one non-official language that is spoken by the highest number of people in Israel. There was a time of mass immigration from the USSR, if you're younger, that's the Soviet Union, um, by Russian Jews, who make up a good portion of the Jewish population of Israel. In fact, about 20% or more of Israelis can speak Russian fluently, which gives you an idea of how often you might hear it in Israel. Many businesses and the government as well make sure to provide information in Russian. And there is even an Israeli an Israeli TV channel in Russian. Now, why am I highlighting that? Well, it makes me think about this: the Hope of Israel Worldwide Youth Devotional in 2018. We've visited this thing time and time again, and specifically this part of the devotional time and time again. This is Sister Wendy Nelson speaking, and she says something fascinating, and I think it has to do with Russia. I think she's trying to give us hints when it comes to the 10 lost tribes, and possibly where many of them are, right? Where many of them are. Let me pull this up. A while ago, like a couple months ago, I did um, a Google Forms survey, an anonymous survey. Okay. I wanted to preserve everybody's privacy, but I did a survey asking people if they were willing to share what tribe they're from based on their patriarchal blessing. Got 482 responses as of right now. And here's the pie chart. You can see that the vast majority are from Ephraim with this poll, which I think is somewhat accurate. I wouldn't be surprised if we had all the numbers in. Yeah, I would think that it would probably still maybe look like this, maybe not. I don't know. But anyway, with this poll, 91.7% were from Ephraim. And the next biggest, just like you would imagine, was from Manasseh. It was 4.2%. But we did get some other tribes. We have 7 that are just from Joseph, which I didn't even know that was possible. But I guess there are some people that are just adopted into Joseph, just in general, rather than specifically Ephraim or Manasseh. We have 4 Benjamin, 2 Levi, 2 Judah, 1 Reuben, 1 Simeon, 1 Dan, 1 Gad, and 1 Issachar, right? So in the youth devotional, this is what Sister Winnie Nelson shared. I'm going to read the little part of her story here. She says, we often we often talk about living in the latter days. We are, after all, Latter-day Saints, but perhaps these days are more quote-unquote latter than we have ever imagined. And that by itself, that statement is fascinating. And I think she's right. This truth became a reality for me because of what I experienced during one 24-hour period of time that commenced on June 15th, 2013. My husband and I were in Moscow, Russia. While President Nelson met with the priesthood leaders, I had the privilege of meeting with nearly 100 of our sisters. I love our Russian sisters. They are spectacular. When I stepped to the pulpit to speak, I found myself saying something I'd never anticipated. So I guess she wasn't planning on doing this. Maybe she had a prompting. She says, I said to the women, quote, I'd like to get to know you by lineage. Please stand as the tribe of Israel that represents the lineage declared in your patriarchal blessing is spoken. Benjamin, a couple of women stood. Dan, a couple more. Reuben, a few more. Naphtali, more stood. As the names of the 12 tribes of Israel were announced, from Asher to Zebulun, I see what she did there, from A to Z. And as the women stood, we were all amazed with what we were witnessing, feeling, and learning. How many of the 12 tribes of Israel do you think were represented in that small gathering of fewer than 100 women on that Saturday in Moscow? 11. 11 of the 12 tribes of Israel were represented in that one room. The only tribe missing was that of Levi. I was astonished. It was a spiritually moving moment for me. Immediately after those meetings, my husband and I went directly to Yerevan, Armenia. The first people we met as we got off the plane were the mission president and his wife. Somehow, she had heard about this experience in Moscow, and with great delight, she said, I've got Levi. I'm gonna end it there, but the link for this will be in the description below if you want to read the whole thing. So you have to wonder, and I wish I had these numbers. You have to wonder, is there a lot more diversity of tribes in Eastern Europe? Maybe specifically Russia and Ukraine. I don't know. I got a really interesting comment from somebody on the channel. This was in response to one of my most recent videos. President Dallin H. Oaks, new scripture can come forth the same way that the Dead Sea Scrolls did. So this is from Lena Gulyayeva. I'm sorry, Lena. Gulyayeva. I think it's Gulyayeva because they pronounce the V like W. Okay, she says, I live in Russia, and through patriarchal blessings here, I know that we have all lost tribes here in Russia and in Ukraine. So, this is anecdotal, meaning that this is just, it's a story, so it's not like a official study or anything like that, but I will take her for her word in what she said. I believe her. I believe her. I believe her. I believe Sister Nelson. So, um, going back to this, the fact that Russian is number 4 on this list, maybe there's something to that. Just like with English, maybe there's something to that. And it would be interesting if Russia is one of the primary places that the 10 lost tribes went. We know because we've studied it on the channel that many have made their way westward, it would seem, based on linguistic evidence. And we're going to look at that in just a minute. But it seems, based on patriarchal blessing evidence, that maybe a lot were in Russia. Well, are in Russia, right? So a sizable population. And it's interesting how, if we were to like see everything that Satan has done, if he knew this and so he wanted Russia and the United States, the East and the West to be at war with each other, when in reality, what if we're much more related than you would have thought, um, based on the blood of Israel? Okay, so thank you, Elena. I'm going to let you know that this is going to be in the video after I'm done with this video. Let's look at a couple more things. Let's look at American and Israeli Jews, because we know that America has a sizable Jewish population. This is from pewresearch.org. Common ground, common destiny with American Jews. Israel and the United States are home to by far, the world's 2 largest Jewish populations. So this is interesting because, again, when we look at our church and our beliefs, okay, we know that America is a promised land. It's a promised land. New Jerusalem is going to be built right here, right? Now, I don't know the size of the Jewish community in the Kansas City area. Most of them are actually like in Florida, in New York, like specifically like New York City. But it's still interesting that out of all places, rather than France or the UK or Italy or Africa, whatever, most of them in the diaspora, the largest population is in the United States, the place for the new Jerusalem. Okay, that probably isn't by accident either. It says about 2/3 of Israeli Jews say they have either a lot or some things in common with Jews in the United States. Overall, 31% of Israeli Jews say they have not too much or nothing in common with American Jews. And it shows the percentages there. Okay, Israeli Jews are largely united by the idea that they share a common destiny with Jews in the United States. Now that's interesting, because what if spiritually they feel the significance of the United States, and they kind of like, they think about, well, yeah, because there's a lot of Jews there, but what if like spiritually they, at some level, they realize from the pre-existence or the Spirit speaking to them that maybe not just these quote unquote Jews in New York, Florida, other places, but what if they like kind of spiritually realize how many of the house of Israel is in the United States? Even though they don't know it cognitively in this life, what if they feel it? They feel the significance. Sorry, that's St. Louis. The significance of it, right? Okay. 3/4 of Israeli Jews share this view. That's a lot. That's a lot. That's almost all of them, including 28% who say U.S. Jews and Israeli Jews share a common destiny to a great extent. and 47% who see such a common destiny to some extent. Roughly a quarter say that US Jews and Israeli Jews share a common destiny, either not much, 19%, or hardly at all, 4%. So they are definitely they are definitely in the minority when it comes to that. So that's an interesting insight with how they view American Jews. This is also from PewResearch.org. It says, in addition, Jews may be particularly attuned to the importance of population trends because of the murder of approximately 6 million Jews, or roughly 2/3 of Europe's entire Jewish population. This is, of course, talking about the Holocaust. It says right here, in the Holocaust. That's a staggering percentage. 2/3. Okay. Depending on one's estimate of the number of Jews living in the US today, the total Jewish population around the world may or may not have returned to its pre-Holocaust level, approximately 17 million in 1939. So that's a fact that I didn't know. And I don't know if that has any significance as far as the second coming or having made that rebound back to its original level, but that's just something I wanted to bring up. It's interesting. We've noted that the church is almost at 17 million, right? It's about the same size as Jews around the world, Judaism. So it's just crazy, the parallels, the commonalities. It's not coincidence. It's not. Okay, here is a map of countries with the largest Jewish populations. Blue is the largest with 5 million or more. The only two are Israel and the United States. Israel and the United States. Okay. Excuse me. Judaism is one of the oldest and most influential religions in the world, with more than 14.7 million practitioners worldwide as of 2019. If counting the quote-unquote enlarged Jewish population, which is to say, if including individuals with partial Jewish heritage, the number of Jews in the world swells to 20 million. So these numbers are a little bit different from what we were just reading, but it's still pretty close to the size of the church, right? Which to me is fascinating. Jewish people make their homes in nearly every country worldwide, but the majority live in one of only two nations, Israel and the United States. Based on data from sources including the Jewish Virtual Library and the American Jewish Yearbook, Israel led the world in an estimated 6.89 million Jews as of April 2021. The U.S. Followed closely behind with 5.7 million, the majority of whom live in New York, California, Florida, and New Jersey. These are the only two nations with Jewish populations that exceed 1 million. So that is just crazy. I forgot, how many Latter-day Saints live in the United States? 16. No, that's not. I think this is it right here. 6.7 million. Let me just make sure. 6, 7. Well, okay, no. I'm sorry, I should have done this before. I wasn't thinking about this. Where does it say it? Whatever. I'm just going to go with what we saw on the when we did the search. Oh, here it is right here. Okay. Members. So this is the United States. 6.7 million. And then for Jews in the United States, 5.7. So even the difference between how many live in the United States and outside of the United States is similar. Isn't that just too coincidental that the numbers are so close? Not only the total number worldwide, but comparing those in the United States and those outside of the United States. It's crazy. That is crazy. Okay. So the top countries are Israel, and then the United States, and then France, Canada, UK, Argentina, Russia, Germany, Australia, Brazil. Okay. Um, I pulled this up just to show the importance of English because English is the number one spoken language in the entire world. It's 1.132 billion speakers. Okay, 1.1 billion speakers. So it's critical. It's kind of a critical language. Russian is at the number 8 spot, so also very important. Okay, I've done a video about British Israelism because there is an idea out there outside of our church that believes that the United Kingdom, the British Isles, uh, that basically that they're descended from Israel, or at least like a part of the population is descended from Israel. And I think that they're right. I think they're right. You know why? Because we've heard that Joseph Smith was a pure Ephraimite, and I do believe that that's true. Um, and the United Kingdom has had played such a role, important role when it comes to the spread of the gospel and also the early days of the church. Because some of the first people to immigrate to the United States from outside the United States in the early days was from the United Kingdom. Now, we're looking at a map here from caliper.com. And what this is, it says each flag represents 100 by 100 miles square area. And so you're taking that square area and then the majority, the prevailing ancestry within that area. And do you notice anything peculiar with this map? Yes, it's over here where Utah is. It's all British flags. It's all British flags. Okay. The vast majority of the country is German primarily. It looks like that's probably the largest one on this map, followed by Mexico in the south. We have Ireland over here in the southern states. So in the southwest, it's Mexico. In the south, it's primarily Ireland, but there is some British and stuff over here. You have some Norwegian up here in, it looks like, North Dakota, Montana, Minnesota. So, but the part that gets me is this right here, because I feel like this is just further evidence that the UK, there really is a lot of British or a lot of Israelite blood in that place. And the fact that, you know, that the headquarters of the church, okay, so the United States speaks English because of the UK. The headquarters of the church as of right now, we speak English because of the United States, because of the UK. I think that's interesting. And I think that that's going to play a role in the future, obviously. Here's another map. This is by county, but it's basically the same thing. Purple, okay, purple is the UK, the United Kingdom. Red is German. Yellow, Mexican. Okay, so that's interesting. Okay, let's move on. Now we've come across this this article in the Ensign, February 1994 Ensign, Tracing the Dispersion by Terry M. Blodgett. And he is a linguist, and he basically, by analyzing locations, names, and linguistics, he was able to basically trace the dispersion of the northern kingdom of Israel. That's what this article is about, is that he believes that you can find evidence for where they went based on language. And I want to read some of this, okay? Okay, let me find the highlights. Okay. It is of interest, therefore, to learn that in Europe, the centuries following 700 BC. Now remember, the Northern Kingdom was conquered around 721 BC. So this is, about 21 years later. So in Europe, the centuries following 700 BC were marked by tremendous outside influence, and language was profoundly affected. So what we're going to be talking about now is we're going to be looking at how English and Germanic languages, more broadly, may be related to Hebrew. Um, the way that Hebrew has had an influence or have changed these languages that we speak today. Because again, I don't know, say that we're in the millennium, and say that we're halfway through. We're 500 years into the millennium. What does the map look like at that point when you're looking at languages spoken in the world? Is there going to be one language spoken? And if so, what? Will the Adamic language come back? Uh, will English become the dominant language, and then maybe through time it'll change and then go back to the pure Adamic language? I don't know. Is Hebrew going to become the main language? I kind of doubt that. But I think it's important. I think English is important. I do. The first language that the Book of Mormon was translated into was English, right? Um, English is the most widely spoken language in the world. Uh, it's spoken by many um, Israeli Jews. I think there's reason for that, and I think some of it may be how English developed, and possibly because of its Hebrew influence. So let's just read about it. Okay, during the period between 700 and 400 BC, numerous languages in Europe underwent major pronunciation changes and absorbed new vocabulary. This was particularly true of the Celtic languages, which were originally spoken throughout Europe, 700 to 300 BC, but gradually became more concentrated in Western Europe and Britain. Okay, Western Europe and Britain. And of the Germanic languages, which were spoken in Central and Northern Europe, in Scandinavia, and eventually in England. The gradual evolving of the sounds that make up words in a language, particularly when two languages merge, is known by linguists as a sound shift. The well-known pronunciation changes of the period of time between 700 and 400 BC have been called the Germanic sound shift because they were the most pronounced and systematic in the Germanic languages, which include English, Dutch, German, Danish, Swedish, Norwegian, and Icelandic. Also during the same time, period, the total vocabulary in the Germanic languages increased by as much as 1/3. Okay, so what he's saying here, is that, because his proposal is that this is because of the tribes that went north, okay, and that they had an effect on those languages, which is interesting because, again, let's look at this map again. Let's look at the flags. British flags, English, right? German flags. German is definitely part of the Germanic family of languages. We have Norway up here, right? So that's kind of interesting that so much of America, even though there's German flags here, they don't speak German nowadays, at least the vast majority of these people, but they're descended from these people that were affected by um, that whose language was affected by Hebrew. And in all likelihood, those tribes intermixed with these people. You get what I'm saying? Okay, so let's go back here. Linguists have long pondered what caused this sound shift and the increase in vocabulary. One theory is that the technologically advanced peoples who introduced iron to Europe, 7th century BC in Austria, 6th century BC in Sweden, so these people also influenced the language changes. Okay, technologically advanced peoples who introduced iron. Okay, linguistic research supports this idea, as well as the idea that these advanced peoples came from the Middle East, where iron was in use. The research shows that the changes in language resulted from an influx of Hebrew speaking people into Europe, particularly into the Germanic and Celtic speaking areas. Right? So, if this group, if it is the 10 lost tribes primarily, and then if they mixed in with the local populations and influenced their language and probably intermarried with them, that may explain this map right here, right? It may just explain this map and what we're seeing. Okay, the Germanic sound shift. Most of the languages of Europe belong to the Indo-European family of languages. So that's like an even larger group, an even larger than the Germanic language. The Germanic languages are just a branch of the Indo-European family of languages. Okay, that is, they are part of the linguistically linked group of languages spoken in Europe and spreading as far east as Iran and India. I should have pulled this up. Let's see. Indo-European language tree. Let's see if we can find this. Get a look at it. Let's go with this. This is uottawa.ca for Canada. So here's let me zoom in. The Indo-European family. So here are the basic branches. Baltic, Slavic is one. Germanic, under which English falls. Roman, or the Romance languages like French, Spanish, Romanian, Portuguese, Catalan. By the way, Catalan, that's spoken where I went to on my mission in the Barcelona mission, which is Catalan is spoken basically kind of along the east coast of Spain, but primarily up in like the northeast in Catalonia. Anyway, and then Celtic, where we have Irish Gaelic, Scottish Gaelic, Welsh. Okay, and then another branch, Albanian, Greek, Armenian, Indo-Iranian, which includes Farsi, Hindi, so on and so forth. These are all related languages. Okay, so that if you weren't familiar with this before, this is it. This is the Indo-European family of languages. These are all related. Okay, so for many years, the peculiarities in the Germanic languages kept linguists from recognizing that the Germanic languages belonged to the Indo-European group. All right, did you know that? I didn't know that. For many years, these peculiarities in the Germanic languages kept linguists from recognizing that the Germanic languages belonged to the Indo-European group. That's weird. That's crazy. Okay? They're talking about they weren't sure if English, Dutch, German, Swedish, Norwegian, Danish, Afrikaans? What? Oh, well, maybe that makes sense. Okay, Frisian and Icelandic. They weren't sure that this even belonged with these other ones here. That is weird to me. However, early in the 19th century, two linguists, Rasmus Rask from Denmark, 1818, and Jacob Grimm from Germany, 1819 to 22, showed that the Germanic languages were indeed part of the Indo-European family, but that their differences in pronunciation were caused by a systematic shift in the sound of two groups of consonants, PTK and BDG. I'm not going to go over that. I think this is the last highlight. Linguists generally agree that these changes began taking place sometime after 700 BC. The time in question, okay, this is the time that this is around the time that the Northern Kingdom was conquered and fled the area, went to other places. So that is fascinating. Let me read this. The first thing I noticed was that Hebrew shifted the same 6 consonants that were shifted in Germanic. Okay, what are the chances of that? The same 6 consonants, PTK and BDG. In ancient Hebrew, these consonants carried a dual pronunciation. Often they did not shift, but when they began a syllable that was preceded by a long vowel or ended in a syllable, then PTK and BDG shifted to the sounds PH, TH, KH, and BH, DH, GH. Thus, the Hebrew word for Spain, Saparad, was pronounced Sepharad, and the word for sign, spelled OT, was pronounced OTH. Okay, so I just highlighted that just because it shows you like an example. And then this is the last one here. Okay, I remember this. A comparison of Hebrew and Germanic. The case for a Hebrew influence on Germanic is further strengthened by a close comparison of the two languages, and particularly of the changes that developed in Germanic following the Assyrian captivity of Israel. The changes fall generally into 3 categories: pronunciation, grammar, and vocabulary. Now, I'm not going to go through all of that, but I will leave this article below if you want to get into it deeper. Okay, so I think there's a pretty solid case that not only did the tribes affect their language, okay, specifically the Germanic languages, but probably also intermarried with them and got lost by losing their identity and becoming part of these people. Okay, now that was from the Ensign, but this is also supported outside of the church. This is from South Florida Sun Sentinel. It says Hebrew could be the basis for many English and European words. I was going to read this whole thing, but I'm just going to read this. Modern scholarship does not deal at all with the etymology of European or world languages from Hebrew, said Barat. It seems crazy at first, as Hebrew is written from right to left, but if you look more closely, similarities can be discovered. This is just the story of someone that kind of was starting to realize a lot of these same kind of similarities. Anyway, you can read that. Here we're looking at the alphabet, and I don't know if you've ever seen this before, but the Hebrew alphabet does, it's weird, but it does actually resemble our modern alphabet that we use, and I'm going to show you. So this is on ancienthebrew.org. It says Old Hebrew and the Aramaic alphabet. As previously mentioned, the Old Hebrew alphabet was used by all Semitic peoples, including Arameans, also called the Chaldeans, but evolved independently from Hebrew. So here it says 5th century BC Hebrew Aramaic alphabet, okay? And then down here, the modern Hebrew Aramaic alphabet. And you can see it looks very, very similar, okay? So 5th century BC Aramaic, modern Hebrew Aramaic. By the 5th century BC, the time of Israelites of the Israelites' captivity in Aramea or Babylon, it no longer resembled the old Hebrew it came from. And it is this Aramaic square script that Israel adopted during their captivity. Okay. So it's talking about the difference from before the Babylonian destruction and captivity and after. Okay, Old Hebrew and the Greek alphabet. So Old Hebrew up here and the Greek alphabet. The Old Hebrew the Old Hebrew alphabet was adopted by the Greeks. Okay, the Old Hebrew alphabet was adopted by the Greeks around the 12th century BC. The first 5 letters of the Hebrew alphabet are Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, and He. These same letters, adopted by the Greeks, became the Alpha for Aleph, Beta for Bet, Gamma for Gimel, Delta from Dalet, and Epsilon for He. Okay, well, epsilon, that really changed, but anyway, simply meaning simple E. While Hebrew is usually written from right to left, Greek was written left to right, and the orientation of the letters were reversed from Old Hebrew. Okay, so you get what it's saying? It's saying, so here's the Old Hebrew up here, the first 5 letters, okay, written from right to left, and you can see this looks like an A. Not so much these other ones. This looks like a D. This looks like an E right here. So the first 5 letters of the Old Hebrew, and then the first 5 letters of the Old Greek. Okay, you see that? Over the centuries, these ancient Greek letters evolved into their modern Greek forms. So compare this right here, this to this. So here, that looks like an A. That is an A. That looks like a B. And here's the B. C, we're not quite there yet, but here's the C or the gamma. Here's the delta or the D. It's just like a triangle. And then the E, right? See the E, the epsilon. Okay. Our English alphabet is Roman. And because the Romans adopted the Greek alphabet, we are able to see our own modern English alphabet in these ancient Hebrew turned Greek letters, the A, B, C, D, and E. The connection between the Middle Hebrew alphabet and the modern Roman alphabet can clearly be seen in the image below. Okay, so Middle Hebrew and modern Roman. A, B, C, D, E, F, Z, H, Y, K, L, M, N, X. Well, the X doesn't really. O, P, Q, R, S, T. So, maybe you've heard this before, maybe you haven't. I remember seeing this. I think it was on the History Channel. I was watching something, and when I saw that, I was blown away. I had no idea. So that's kind of crazy, isn't it? Even the alphabet is related. Okay. Now this through the Greek and then Roman rather than Germanic, but the Germanic languages uses the Roman alphabet. So there's much more relation when it comes to language and alphabet than you may have realized. And it's fascinating. Okay. Let's read a little bit about the Adamic language. This is from BYU. Okay. We'll see what it says here. Okay, this is from, the author is John S. Robertson. The concept of the Adamic language. Now, here's the real question. The Adamic language being the original, and then if the Hebrew is descended from the Adamic, even though, different, but maybe it's similar, it just makes me wonder if through the process of time, the language is going to be restored. And like I said, maybe somehow over a couple hundred years, English will transform back into the Adamic language. I don't know. That's probably, maybe it's an oversimplification, but I'm just kind of like looking at these different things. Okay, the concept of the Adamic language grew among Latter-day Saints out of statements from Scripture, comments of early church leaders, and subsequent tradition. It does not play a central doctrinal role, and there is no official church position delineating its nature or status. The scriptures state that this language was written and spoken by Adam and his children, was pure and undefiled. And that takes you to Moses chapter 6, verses 5 through 6, which let's just read that really quick. Verse 5, a book of remembrance was kept, in the which was recorded the language of Adam, for it was given unto as many as called upon God to write by the spirit of inspiration. And by them their children were taught to read and write, having a language which was pure and undefiled. Which it'd be great if we could have that now. Okay. One thing about English that bothers me to no extent is how things are spelled and then how they're pronounced. Spanish is really good because the way that things are spelled is how they're pronounced. But that's not how it is with English. Look at this stupid word, taught, Taught. That should be tugged, tugged. Sorry, tugged, but it's taught. It's stupid. It's pure. It's stupidity. So hopefully we'll get a pure language where the way that you write it is the way that it sounds when you speak it, and maybe more accurate. Maybe less words that are like you have words that mean the same thing. Why aren't they just two separate words? That's another thing that drives me crazy. Uh, so anyway, okay, let's get back to it. Um, Brigham Young taught that it continued from Adam to Babel, at which time the Lord caused the people to forget their mother tongue, scattering them abroad upon the face of the whole earth, except possibly for Jared and his family in the Book of Mormon. Mosiah, well, and again, I'd like to know if maybe people of the covenant, like Melchizedek, Abraham, I'd like to know if they lost their language or if maybe that was kind of preserved. I think the Jews believe that Hebrew is the Adamic language because I think it's their belief that basically the other peoples of the earth, their language was changed, but not theirs, and it came through as Hebrew. I'm not sure about that, but I think I've seen that somewhere. Okay, this statement reflects the widely held Mormon belief that the founding members of the Jaredite civilization preserved the Adamic language at their immigration to the New World. Thus, the description by the brother of Jared of his apocalyptic vision was rendered linguistically inaccessible without divine interpretive help, since, quote, the language which ye shall write, I, God, have confounded. You have to wonder if if that original language was preserved. Maybe that's something that's in the sealed portion of the plates. Maybe it's been preserved and then it'll come back. I don't know. That's just an interesting thought that I just had. In the early years of the church, some words of the Adamic language may have been revealed to Joseph Smith. And other early church leaders, including Brigham Young and Elizabeth Ann Whitney, who were said to have spoken it in tongues. Well, that's interesting. More recently, President Ezra Taft Benson alluded to its possible universal reinstatement to resolve linguistic diversity. Ooh, we're gonna have to read that. We are gonna have to read that. I didn't read this whole thing. I just figured that I would just read it raw. but we are probably going to have to do a separate video on that. Okay, similarly, Zephaniah 3:9, possibly referring to the future of the Adamic language, says, quote, I will turn to the people a pure language, that they may all call upon the name of the Lord. End quote. The word pure comes from the Hebrew berura, from barar, to cleanse or purify, also to choose. Because it is generally held that a language reflects its culture, possibly the erosion of the purity of the Adamic culture after Babylon led to a contaminant loss of purity of expression in its mirroring language. All right. So that is it. That's it for this one. Thank you, Rachel, for sending me this video. Please, everybody else, go check it out. It'll help you. It'll just help make things come to life a little bit more. I'm sure that you've watched plenty of things, but it helps. This helps. It's really nice to hear how he's talking, how he can tell that something spiritual is happening, that the Lord is fulfilling prophecy, that he's part of it, that we're living in a special time. So it's amazing. It is simply amazing. All right, that's gonna be it for this one. So if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Also make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.